Welcome to the Jenna Banks Show. I am your host, Jenna Banks, and this show is all about helping you live life to your fullest potential. Today's show is for you if you either want to start a business or you already have a business up and running and you're located in the United States. Why specifically the United States? Because I'm going to be revealing a secret that most people don't know about that is absolutely free, but it's federally funded and available only to American businesses. Now, it's called the Women's Business Centers, but guys, don't tune out because they are totally gender inclusive. In fact, I believe it's around 30% or so of their members are men. So don't tune out. You're going to want to listen to this. So it's called the Women's Business Centers. It is funded by the SBA, but also funded by private institutions that donate money as well as private donors. And it's all about helping you succeed as an American business owner. And I bet you've never heard of them. So what kind of resources do they offer? Well, number one, if this is all they offered, which is the business coaching, that in and of itself would be well worth it to sign up for their services because business coaching can cost a lot of money. Imagine having a coach or a mentor who is on your side there to help give you guidance every step of the way with your business, wherever you ask for help. So let's say you need some help with your marketing. They'll help you with that. Let's say you need some help with your customer acquisition or your product development or helping your online website look better. Like they're there to help give you guidance every step of the way, including all the way to funding. And who better to help give you guidance on getting funded and help you evaluate whether or not your business is ready for funding yet, or what you need to get ready in order to be eligible to get the funding that you want. Who better than the Women's Business Centers because they are backed by the SBA. So you'd already have that in there. As you can tell, I'm really excited to rip the veil off of the secret for you. So they have around 130 locations, and I believe they are in every single state except Alaska, but that doesn't even matter anymore because during COVID, they became very adept at helping people virtually. So it doesn't matter where you are in the country, this help is available to you when you need it. And who better to share this information with us today than Corinne Hodges, the CEO herself. Corinne joined the Association of Women's Business Centers as CEO in January 2019 and is charged with bringing about enhanced sustainability and increased capacity to the association and its members. When WBC and the National Network of Women's Business Centers were confronted with the effects of a global pandemic in early 2020, Hodges and the advocacy team sprung into action. While Women's Business Centers responded tirelessly to small business concerns in their communities, Hodges and the team championed their efforts to secure resources. Thankfully, members of Congress foresaw the important role that Women's Business Centers would play in an economic disaster and appropriated record-level emergency funding, also known as the CARES Act, to be administered by the United States Small Business Association, the SBA. In addition to the $150,000 awarded annually to each women's business center, centers could also access up to $420,000 of CARES Act funds, giving them access to a total of $570,000 in a single fiscal year. In addition to their own annual fundraising efforts, this unprecedented combination of funding is the highest level of funding than any other point in history. Lucky you. Women's Business Centers leverage this infusion of funds into tremendous impact. Hi, Corinne. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It is my pleasure. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about your center. So if you could just shed a little bit more light on what it is that your organization does, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So I am the CEO of the Association of Women's Business Centers, which is an organization that represents a network of 135 women's business centers. They're spread across the country in every state with the exception of Alaska.
Wow. Okay, great. Now, is that in most every major city then, or are you in smaller rural areas as well?
We aren't everywhere we'd love to be. There's definitely room for growth, but we are found in most major cities, I would say, not every major city. Some states more so than others. It just sort of depends. We do have some wonderful rural coverage in certain areas of the country, and then again, not in other areas. For example, the Mississippi Delta, there's no women's business center there. But I'm hoping through some project work that we're doing in the future that that will all change. And my ideal scenario would be a women's business center within 50 miles of anyone in the country. But we've got a long ways to go before we can get there.
Hey, gotta have goals, right? I love it. So tell me a little bit more about how women can benefit from even just looking into and getting involved with the association.
Awesome. Well, really, whether a person is in the idea phase or has an existing business, has a business that's even successful, there's really no wrong business stage. That's all the right time to contact a women's business center. The women's business centers, those 135 organizations across the country, those are SBA funded. That's government funding, and that's taxpayer dollars, which means services that are provided by women's business centers are in most cases free.
Amazing.
Let me say again, like they really are mostly free with the exception of some long-term training opportunities. And the kinds of things you get at a women's business center can vary so much from one to the next, but in general, they provide counseling, training, connection, like networking opportunities. The types of education and training that they offer, that's what really varies by community. Like you might have a how to get into the food truck business in San Francisco course, or you might have a how to enter into the fashion and beauty manufacturing industry in Manhattan. It just depends on sort of where the skill set is and what industries are really popping and the kinds of things that women are really interested in.
That's really incredible. I had no idea such an organization existed. How come this? I don't know. I feel like I could have really utilized this help when I was starting businesses in the past, or even just in it and looking for perhaps funding, which is another service that you all provide as well, right?
Exactly. And like, don't worry, you're not the only one who doesn't know about this amazing secret. That's why I was so excited for you to invite me to this show, because that's our biggest problem. All of the government funding that goes into these programs is specifically driven toward the programming, toward delivering the services, and not toward marketing and advertising that could help us create more awareness. So we are definitely in search of resources and support that helps get the word out. Word of mouth is a really great way. So it's like telling friends about women's business centers. So I think the second part of your point was about capital. And capital is just such an important part of what a business needs. It's one of those key ingredients for success. Again, whether it's the business idea phase or it's a capitalization of equipment to expand, a restaurant or something, or open a second location, capital is essential. It's just a necessary tool. And so women's business centers can be a great avenue to help prepare a business to either select the right type of capital or to really direct them towards the resources. In fact, 40% of the women's business centers actually have lenders inside the same host organization.
Wow.
So you might find a women's business center is situated inside a YWCA, or inside a community development financial institution, or inside a chamber of commerce. That's the host organization. And 40% of our hosts, they have lenders right there, so they can like walk you down the hall and help you prepare with that. Be prepared with that loan package application. Or they may say, look, borrowing money is really not going to be the best form of capital for this business. You may need like angel investors, equity type capital. And so they can help direct you to the different options, whether it's crowdfunding or like the angel investing that I mentioned. There's so many options and things that maybe not all small businesses are really savvy about.
Yeah. I think a lot of, especially new entrepreneurs, have no idea what even is possible, what exists. And if you don't know, then, you might not have all the opportunities that you might have had to succeed without this information. So it's so amazing that you guys are there. And I will do my best to shed light on this amazing opportunity that's out there for women. So how many women a year and with female entrepreneurs would you say that the centers help?
Well, I guess for us, in some ways, it's quality over quantity. We are really focused on the economically and socially disadvantaged entrepreneur. So that means we're not really trying to source out the already successful businesses. Our charge by statute is to serve economically and socially disadvantaged.
Mm.
Those types of service hours are the toughest. So we spend a lot of time, on average 3 to 4 counseling hours per client per year. Across the network, we see close to 200,000 clients per year, but it's very intensive time. And the results are proven. The outcomes that we're able to achieve in terms of like capital numbers and revenue growth, and really helping to sustain and grow businesses. The proof is in the pudding, and the process really works.
That's amazing. I mean, I love that you service underprivileged entrepreneurs as well, because those are the ones who need the most help, and they are lacking the most resources, especially when it comes to the human resources that come from the coaching side of things. You know, just having a coach, having a mentor who is their goal, their directive is to help you be successful. What a powerful person to have on your team, and a powerful center to have on your team. So that's absolutely incredible. And every female entrepreneur who needs a little help in this regard should definitely be looking into the centers and seeing what's available to them.
Most definitely. And I think one of the messages I like to get across too is that sometimes the entrepreneur has an idea of what they think they need to help their business grow, or really even just get established. Oftentimes we hear businesses come in asking, hey, what grants are available to help kickstart my business?
Yep.
Truly, there are some, especially during COVID, but grants are just not the most meaningful way. But we'll hear the question, and the Women's Business Center can provide some really meaningful solutions. So it's okay to go in with a question you think you have, but you might get some answers back that don't necessarily deliver what you expected. You can rest assured, like I say, that the results are in the pudding. And the other thing I would say is plan B is better. So a lot of businesses come in with what they think is like the most amazing idea for a product or a service. What they may end up finding is that there's really not necessarily the kind of market appeal or demand for that product or service. And so typically they do a little bit of market research. They come back and, with the help of a Women's Business Center, can identify something that really does appeal to the market. And so again, we'll come back and say, plan B is better. It wasn't maybe what you had in mind, but we got you to a place where you can really be successful.
You know what? That is so very helpful. As an entrepreneur, I can speak from experience. I have been and currently am in a situation where we're doing a lot of market research, trying to prove if the product is viable and if there is a market for that. And, you know, it can take a lot of time, resources, money. And especially if you don't know where to go or how to go about conducting that kind of research, can be really daunting. So to have that available at no charge, government supported, government funded, that is huge. It can literally make the difference between whether or not your company makes it or breaks it, because even money in that kind of a situation isn't going to really help you if your product isn't viable enough.
Exactly. And you may be already soundboarding with your close network, your friends and your family, and they may not be willing to tell you that you have, quote unquote, an ugly baby. But if you walk into a Women's Business Center, it's their job and it's their calling to help you with the business. And they're going to be able to tell you, look, this plane won't fly. This product just won't go. So really, maybe there are some modifications to make. And it's a science-based approach. It's market research, it's feasibility studies and things like that.
That's incredible. Okay, so let's say I go in there, I'm a fairly new entrepreneur, I have an idea, I've put up my website, let's say it's an online shop, and you think the product is something people will buy, but you're not quite getting the purchases that you had hoped. It's not selling quite as well. Let's say they come in at that stage. What are the various services and resources that you think they could be tapping into that would help them on their journey to give them the best chance of being successful?
I would say in part, it depends on what the goal is for the entrepreneur. So they may have started an e-commerce site with a goal of expanding to new products, or they may really just want to sell that one product in tremendous volume. I think at that point, it would be to first identify what the plan is and what the goal is, what they hope to achieve, and then to really think about what's happening in competition. So we can sort of evaluate and know if a product can be successful by looking at, well, what are the competitors' products? Is this type of product out there, and is it selling maybe in another parallel market? Is there something similar we can point to understand if what we're doing is really something that can take hold? And then another dimension of the advice may involve access to new markets. Just because the e-commerce site is sort of like live on the World Wide Web, it may not actually be being seen by the right places. So is that e-commerce site visible? And there's a whole marketing strategy there, but also, is there maybe an appetite for this kind of product in another market? Like, is exporting the product viable, or selling it through Amazon or other types of places? So it's going to be custom advice given that particular entrepreneur's goals, resources, et cetera.
So let's say the entrepreneur then takes that advice and starts implementing it, and then they say, okay, this isn't working, or I need a little bit of more help here. Can they just keep coming back for more assistance?
As many times as they would like, they can return, and they'll build a relationship over time. There's actually a coaching and business advising process, and the Women's Business Center will take them through their scientific process, can refer them to partners that could also help assist them in different points of the journey. And ultimately, probably the business will get to a point where they'll say, I get it. I'm off and running, and they may get to a point where they're sort of independent and may not need much support, at least until they get to that next growth phase, or, an opportunity for potentially more capital.
That's incredible. So then once they're up and running, would they need need anything from the centers after that besides funding? Is there anything else that's offered? Just asking, not that it isn't enough already, because it's incredible. But, just wanting to make sure I cover all the bases.
I think certainly. I think entrepreneurship is a very lonely kind of place to be. Small business owners, male or female, and in any demographic or social bracket, find that it's a very lonely place to be. You have to make very hard decisions. You don't necessarily know who you can trust, and you can't always talk about your problems with your employees. If covering the next payroll is a problem, that's not really a conversation you want to be having with employees. So you need a place where you can soundboard. A women's business center can be a really wonderful place to establish and return for that kind of network. It's just understated, having really that group of people that you can really rely on, and who can kind of commiserate with you and can share what experience that they've had that may be beneficial as you're trying to make really important decisions.
Absolutely. So there's also networking opportunities with other business owners in the community.
Most definitely. And we find that these communities of women provide such safe and meaningful connection. Not that that should be the only form of connection, but it's just a really special connection that can be available thanks to the Women's Business Center's events or other mentorship and networking opportunities they provide.
And I can provide proof that expanding beyond yourself and opening yourselves up to sharing with others, helping others, and receiving the assistance back can take you so much further than if you try to do everything by yourself. Can you share some examples of women's businesses that have benefited from the Women's Business Center?
Oh my gosh, there are so many great examples. I'm wanting to run into my husband's shoe closet right now and go grab a sample of a product so I could show you. We have one example of a client of a women's business center. She actually, when she went to the Women's Business Center the first time, she lived in the state of New York, but she went to the New Jersey Women's Business Center, which was like closest to her. I'm not that familiar with New York, New Jersey area, but anyway, that's how the story goes. So I was going to look up her product name, and I'll certainly be able to tell you in just a moment. But what she's created is a very scientific approach to shoe insoles and like yoga mats that stimulate because of the texture. So it's kind of a bumpy, if not pointy, bumpy texture inside the insoles of these shoes and like yoga mats. And the idea is that by stimulating the blood flow through this texture, you can have a whole different experience with movement, both in your like yoga, Pilates, or floor exercise practice, but also just in walking. And the reason my husband has come full circle with this product is he actually has neuropathy. And his neuropathy, there's just not much he can do for it. It's not a diabetic neuropathy. It's just like circulation and old age kind of thing. He's much older than I am. And this insole has really made a difference for him. And the company is called Naboso, Naboso. And she moved her business out to Arizona. But the scientific approach to like wellness and healthcare, this is a niche kind of thing for women-owned businesses. Not to say that every women's business is obviously in that industry, but we just tend to find that women's businesses really care more about society, about the environment in general. And
so true.
And I think this was just a really great example where they took their passion and converted it into a product. And the last time I was on her website, I actually saw she was doing an equity offering, like a crowdfunding, where you could visit the site, you could buy a product, or you could invest in the business and potentially, realize a return later. So really interesting products.
That's awesome. So let's say I wanted to contribute to the movement. How can I share my time, talent, or resources with the Women's Business Center if I want to mentor or anything like that?
I'm really glad you asked that because I wanted to mention something about this. For women's businesses, for women who are in business and are successful and really want to give back to this effort, there's a tremendous opportunity to do that. And time, talent, and resources are all great ways. I'd say being an instructor, providing guidance, and also just, writing a check sometimes. I've actually had women tell me, look, I'm really kind of busy and I can't give you time. I can't serve on your board. I can't help teach a class, but I can write you a check. It's like, great. Writing a check that goes a long way. And especially for women's business centers who the government requires that they match their funds dollar for dollar. Every dollar that they tend to get from foundations and funders tends to be restricted. Like funders want that money to be used for something in particular. What they really need is money to go into the operating budget. So even small contributions like that can really be meaningful for women's business.
Okay, so I have a selfish question, and that is, can anyone apply regardless of their economic situation, their income situation, what stage their business is in?
There's no application.
Oh.
And you'll be surprised to know women's business centers don't only serve women.
Oh.
So in a world where we're all much more inclusive thinking than we used to be, women's business centers have always had that mindset. Because they're federally funded, they target women with their marketing, but they never turn anyone away. In fact, 30% of the women's business center clientele aren't women. And so it's safe. Anyone can go. So you can't be turned away. I would say the other aspect of this is just sharing a little bit of data, I think is one requirement that can tend to make some people uncomfortable. So when they go into a women's business center, the intake process involves collecting some information about you. Well, why? Because the federal government kind of wants to know where those dollars are going. So they like to know a little bit about demographics. They want to know, your racial or ethnic background. And those things are all voluntary, but it's just, I think it's a great thing to help the program demonstrate who it's serving and how well it's doing. But
Absolutely.
So really, it costs nothing. You just are asked to share a little bit of information about yourself.
That's incredible. And it's inclusive of everybody, regardless of gender. So men, if you're interested, don't pay attention to the word women's in the Women's Business Center. It's available to you as well. So how can somebody find a location near them?
Well, we try to make this easy. So we'll send you to awbc.org. That's our website /WBC-locator. But the Find a WBC button is right at the top of the homepage, awbc.org. So we hope you can find it. You can search by zip code, city. It populates a pretty Google map. So if you don't see one near you, it's actually okay to also call one that's a little further away, because we all learned during COVID that we can provide a whole lot of value even through the remote service. So
I was
I'd
going
say,
to ask you about that if you provide the remote help, because that is important. And especially during COVID, and who knows what the future holds. We may, if we go into future lockdowns or whatever, it's good to know that that there is no location restriction and you don't have to be there in person.
exactly.
So Corinne, are there any grants that you would like to talk about today that are covered by your centers?
Well, yeah, I'd actually like to talk about two things. One of the greatest funding sources right now for business, for a variety of resources, is the federal government. And AWBC, my organization, in partnership with America's SBDC, we launched a website that consolidates all the federal agency information for small businesses related to COVID at one place. It's covid-sb.org. So that's a great place to search. And I'll say that's also another place you can find a women's business center, but the search tool also lets you locate SBDCs, the Small Business Development Centers, and Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and SCORE volunteers. And if you take the universe of all of those resources combined, there are actually 15,000 advisors across the country. So there's definitely no way that a business can say they can't find help or they can't get help near them.
Yeah.
We have a specific grant that I'd also like to share about targeting small businesses who employ individuals age 50 plus. So for that small business who wants to invest in the skills of those employees, this is a great opportunity. Specifically, the criteria include that the 50 plus employee should be currently at a low wage, $16 an hour or less, because the whole philosophy behind this project and this grant is to invest in this employee through training, at which point they conclude the training and they should be of greater value to the business, where the business can now increase the wage at least $2 an hour. And if all of those boxes are checked, this grant will refund or reimburse between $2,000 and $2,500 of training expenses. We find this is just a tremendous resource because I'm hearing small businesses really see the value in this 50 plus workforce. There's a work ethic there, and sometimes there's just not a skill set. And so by adding some technical skills, they can do so much and add great value. I'll also add that the training could just be even in-house training. It doesn't have to be a third-party provided training. You don't have to send this employee to, a university or get a certification. It could just be some internal dedicated time, and you're reimbursed for the time that it took you to train them and the time you paid them to be training.
That's incredible. And you know what? Our 50 plus workforce needs some help in that regard. Time is, we're evolving and technology is evolving at such an incredible rate. And, if you found yourself in a job where you were there for 20 years and you were only doing one specific thing, maybe it was customer service, and you never, you need certain technical skills or other training to take on another role that's more, let's say, age appropriate, or that fits with what you want right now, or you just want to make a change, having someone have the incentive to invest into you and train you is a powerful thing to have. So that's incredible. I love that the government is funding that.
That's actually
that's
AARP.
an AARP.
AARP Foundation's funding it. But I should also mention it's gender neutral.
Amazing. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah. AARP, I love you. That's incredible. What an incredible grant. Thank you for offering that. And thank you for telling us about that, Corinne. Again, these are amazing secrets that they're not necessarily secrets. They just are things that most of us don't know about. And as an entrepreneur, having every available resource, especially one that's free, is something that we can all benefit from. So thank you so much for shedding some light on that today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, Corinne. I hope you got a lot of valuable information in today's episode. I would like to encourage you to go visit the website for the Women's Business Centers, which is awbc.org. You can also go on there and find a location near you. But again, even if there isn't one near you, you can sign up to be included virtually. If you enjoyed the content of the show today, please don't forget to subscribe. I have so much more amazing content coming your way in the future. I'm all about helping you live life to your fullest potential. So don't forget forget to subscribe. And I'd love to connect with you on social media. I am the most active on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook. You'll find me at both at Jenna Banks.0. And I'm on LinkedIn, Jenna Banks. So if you prefer that method, I'm also quite active there. And please visit my website, jenna-banks.com, and sign up for my email list. I send out some really great info there, and I promise I will not spam you. So again, jenna-banks.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope to see you next time. And remember, your love is your power.